Hello, so it's Michael here, and today I thought I would do another part on the dialogue system. So there's a few additional things I wanted to sort of go over and show you how to achieve in your own projects, if it's something that you're wanting to do. So I'll just go ahead and get into it. So the first one was how you can have it set up so that certain parts of your dialogue kind of like auto-progress.
Hi, do you have any?
So just here at the moment, obviously we get the options. There's this one here where it's just a button to continue. Now, in some instances, you might not want an actual button, and instead you want it just to automatically progress after X amount of time. So I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and set that one up. So what we'll do is I'm just going to go ahead and open up the dialog base. And what you want to do is you need to go to essentially be the widget. But if you just double click on where it says update dialog text, the function that's in the add dialog function, that should open up the dialog widget itself. And this is the function that gets called when we want to update the text. So what we want to do is add some logic in here that will check to see whether or not there's any options. And if there isn't, it'll then auto-progress. So yes, we want to check the options to see whether or not there's anything in there. And if it's empty, have it where it will automatically progress the dialogue. So that way we don't need to show that continue button, and it will just automatically do its thing. So what we can do, so we've got this bit here, so I'm just going to move this over a little bit. And we want to add a check in between where we actually set the dialog text and start the for loop for adding the options. So what we can do is if we get a copy of the option text, so this is the variable, so that's the input here. This is just the variable node for it. And the first thing we want to do is not empty. So this is where we check to see whether or not that particular array is empty. Well, not empty in this case. And we can go ahead and, if that's true, so it has options listed in it, only then do we actually go into this loop to add those options buttons. If it is empty, what we then want to do is actually start a timer. So we can do set timer by event, and it should look a little something like this. And then we can come in and create an event, and I'm just going to go from the drop down, click create a matching function. And this will create a function on the left hand side, and I'm just going to call this one auto progress. Now there are a few additional changes we do need to make to actually accommodate for the auto progress. So the way that it currently progresses is actually in the widget itself. So if we open up the dialog options widget, when this is called, it calls the update selected option, which is here. And that's in the main base. Instead, however, we kind of want to, we want to call the same function essentially. So if we go to the auto progress, we can get the owning dialog component, and we can call that function. So it's update selected option. Now we've got a few issues here in the sense that we can't actually manually type something in here. We have to connect something up to it. So what we can do, if we actually double click on the function to open it up, and we can come down to the inputs and just untick where it says pass by ref. And that will then allow us to be able to physically select an option in there. So yes, that's certainly one option that we can go for. However, one of the issues we have is we don't have the progress index. So the progress index does get passed through, or sorry, the dialog index does get passed through here. So we kind of have a choice of where we can either promote that to a variable, so it's within the dialog widget itself, so we can connect it up, or there is an alternative option. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the alternative. So what we can actually do is if we can create an event dispatcher, and we can call this on auto progress, like so. And instead of calling the update selected option, we're just going to call this event dispatcher. Right, so. Now what we can do is if we go back to the dialog base, when we go to the open conversation, it's in here we actually create this dialog widget. Now, the next thing we can do is from the widget itself, let me just tidy a few things up here. So this dialog widget I'm just reconnecting just so it looks a little bit tidier. So what we can do with this, because it's the specific widget type, we can actually bind to that auto progress event. So whenever it gets called within the dialog widget, we can have it, so the main dialog base, call its own function, which is what we're going to do. So we're going to do add a new event, so let's create event, and just as we did with the auto progress, we're going to create a matching function. I'm just going to call that one auto progress again. Now what we can do is we can call that function in here. But we also have access to the dialog index directly in here, so we can just connect that up. Now for the option index, we can just leave that at 0. So it's kind of like assuming that it's just the default option. But because there's no options, it's just going to be used to automatically progress when we need to. Okay. Yeah, so as far as I can see, that should all be working there. So we can specify the time. So if I just set it to 2 seconds, and then if we go into the mouse dialog, I'm just going to find the one where we only have the one option. Yeah, so these ones here where we just have continue, I'm just going to remove those, so this way it's going to be empty. And it is wanting me to connect something to the options text. So what I'll do is I'll just remove the array element instead. Like so. Now if we give that a quick test.
Hi, do you have any teas? What does Sarah really want?
Yeah, so as you can see there was no options on that particular option, and then it's just automatically closed for me. Now one thing that we do need to do is actually determine how long it's going to wait before it auto closes. Now if you've got quite a short piece of text, you probably want it to close a little bit quicker. But if you've got a bit more to read, then you're probably going to want it to take longer before it auto closes to give the player time to actually read the dialogue. So there's a few different ways we can go about it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a copy of the dialogue. So we are back in the widget where we call that set that auto time progress. But I'm going to get the dialogue and I'm going to convert it to a string. Like so. And then I'm going to pull from the string and I'm going to pass into an array. And then we can actually choose the delimiter. And for this, I'm going to use a space. So it can be a little bit difficult sometimes. So if you look at Control A, once you're in there, you can make sure you select everything, delete, and then just press space once. And then you should see the space in there. Well, you won't see the space because it's a space. So if you do have issues with this, you might just need to double check to make sure there is actually a space in the delimiter. Now what this is going to do is it's going to put every single word into its own array element. And then what we can do is we can use the length of that array to determine how many words there actually are. Now, so if there's, at the moment, you could kind of think of it if there's 10 words in there, it will take 10 seconds to auto-close. If there's only one, it will only take 1 second to auto-close. Now, there's probably better ways to deal with this. This is just a quick way to go about it. I know sometimes certain words take longer, like how many syllables and things like that, but that'll obviously make things a little bit more complex and things like that. But this is obviously something you can go ahead and tweak and change however you like. As I mentioned, at the moment it's currently based on the total number of words, and 10 seconds for 10 words is quite a long time. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to convert the integer to a float, to float, and then I'm actually going to multiply that by 0.3. So it's going to be 0.3 seconds per word that it'll stay on the screen for. And then I'm just going to add a kind of like a base amount to that. So the absolute minimum that it'll ever be on the screen for, assuming there's just one word, is 0.6 seconds. Now that itself might still be quite short in some instances, but yet again, this is something you can play around with. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug that in, just like so. Now let's just double check the dialogue. So there are a few different lengths there. So if we give this another quick test.
Hi, do you big meaning.
So as you can see there, the text
Hi,
auto
you have
close.
any teas? Oh, that's so. I really want some teas.
And then I think the last one.
Thank you. You're so kind.
And there we go. As you can see there, obviously you don't get the continue box or anything like that, and it'll just automatically close. The moment you connect an actual option to it, then it won't auto close and it'll require the player's input. So it's kind of like two options you can do there. If you're wanting the player to physically click, you can put the continue button in or whatever sort of text you want, and that button will then show up instead. So that's sort of a quick way you can go about setting up the sort of auto progress on the dialogue based on the options input. And the next thing I did want to do, and that's actually in regards to the tree index. So back in the dialog base. So at the moment it's not something that's used very much. The only place the variable itself is used is in the set dialog tree index, but it's kind of something that we set up to use within any child blueprints to allow you to use those different branches. Now, one of the issues with this current method is there's no way to save the progress of a specific branch. So if we're on dialog tree index 0, for example, and we have a particular point where we've done something, so like for example, we've started a quest with like an NPC, and and there's some different dialogue that then happens because we've started the quest. If we then switch the branch, it has to clear that progress for the other branch to work, which means if you then switch back to the previous one, so index 0, all that progress has been lost. So it doesn't know that you've started that quest, and you'll get that initial dialogue again, which isn't always desirable. So what I'm wanting to do is actually go ahead and set up a slightly better system that would allow you to essentially keep track of different progress for different branches. Now, the first thing I'm actually going to do is come into the dialog index, and instead of it being the dialog index, I'm actually going to rename this to active tree branch. Now, hopefully this will actually prevent a bit of confusion as well, because I know in a few cases some people mix up the dialog tree index, and I've just done it there, with the dialog index, so make sure you do rename the right one. So having it as one bit more of a distinguishable name is going to make things a bit easier, but also we're actually going to change the variable type from integer to name, like so. Oh. Looks like I've just had a little crash there. Okay, there we go. So that's restarted. So what's actually happened there is actually a bug that happens to me from time to time within Unreal Engine. And that's where you make some changes, you go to compile, and then the editor just freezes. I have found that there are a few ways to actually mitigate this, because chances are when I make the same changes, it's going to do exactly the same thing. So what you can do, so I'm just going to go and rename this again. So active tree branch, or active dialog branch, and we'll change that to the name integer again. What I'm going to do is actually just update a few things first as well. So in the set dialog tree index, we want to change that to the name for the input type, and then dialog branch. And cut that back up. That's so. And I believe in here. Yeah. So I'm just fixing some of the errors in the mouse blueprint at the moment. There we go, save those. And then I'll come back into here, and I'm going to save and compile. And as you can see, it has crashed again. It's frozen. Now, when you kind of get stuck in one of these loops, it's quite important that you save first before you try and compile. So even though it's crashed, because you've saved, those changes will have saved, and then when you relaunch, the changes are still there and you can compile normally. Don't know why it does what it does, but it's just one of those weird engine bugs. So hopefully that'll help some of you if it does happen. Okay, yeah. So as you can see, even though we did crash, because we saved before we compiled, all these stuff's in there now, and it compiles fine. Don't know why it does it. It's one of those things. Okay. Another thing I'm going to do, the set dialog tree index, I'm just going to rename that as well, just so it's a bit more descriptive as to what it is. So set dialog branch. That's so. Okay, so that's the quick change that we've made there. So in terms of the way that it functions, assuming we switch this to a switch on name, it'll work very similarly to how we've got it set up. So I do just want to make the active tree branch. I'm going to make that called default now. Let's add a new case to this so we can do it given cheese. So the default one, so if there's not any so if the name that's listed in here isn't on the switch, it will just go through the default. So, and then if we've got the give cheese, it'll go down that one. So what we can do over here, we can just have it set to the given cheese branch. So when we switch it, it'll then go down to there. So this itself should work exactly the same as using the integer. So there are a few more things that we do want to be doing. Now, when we actually set the branch, it'd be nice to actually have an option as to whether or not we update the progress of the current branch and store it, or whether or not we just clear it. So I'm just going to create a quick enumeration. I'm just going to call this one the dialog progress store type. Bit of a long one. Again, you can name these whatever you like, as long as you know what they are. I'm going to add two in there, and the first one is just going to be update. So the first one will be the default option, and then the second one is just going to be called clear. We can come back into the set dialog branch. I'm just going to unhook what we've had previously for now, and then what I want to do on the input, I want to add a new one. I'm going to call that one progress handler. And then we can do the dialog progress store type. And from there we can do a switch on the enum, and you should get one that looks like this with the update and clear. So far we're making some progress there, but now what we actually need to do is create a new variable in here, and this is actually going to store the progress itself. So I'm just going to create a new variable called branch progress. I'm going to start with the type of a name, and we want to make that a map. So what we want to do is pretty much store whatever's in the dialog progress into the branch progress for the specific dialog branch that we have selected. Now, the dialog progress itself, it is a map of integer type integer, which is obviously quite important in that particular structure. So what we're going to have to do is actually create a structure to kind of encapsulate that, as it were. Now, I'm just going to call this one struct dialog progress. And you just want to make this a map that's integer as the key and the value as the key. That's so. And then go back to the branch progress, we can change this to the dialog progress structure. So if we was to get a value, if we actually split this, it'll just be exactly the same as this one here, which is what we want. So the first thing we do is if we pull in the branch progress, and then we go to add, and we can then connect the active dialog branch. So that's what we're currently on. So if we do clear, we can just leave this blank and it'll essentially set the value to empty. Alternatively, you could just clear the branch altogether if you wanted. So the other option is to just remove it. Like so. So that way it wouldn't be listed in the array at all. So that's that one done. Now we can handle what we actually do when we want to update the progress and kind of like store it, as it were. So we want to do something similar. So we get the branch progress, and we do add, and we connect the active dialog branch variable. We connect that to the update. But this time what we want to do is actually pull in the dialog progress. So for the add, we can make the structure and then we connect that progress to it. Like so. And then once we've done that, what we need to then do is, if there's any progress stored within the dialog progress, in the branch, we want to set that to the current dialog progress. So what we can do is we get the branch progress and we do find. And this time we want to use the dialog branch that's coming in. So we can do the get dialog branch. So now we're trying to find the stored progress for the one we're trying to set it to. I'm just going to split the structure pin, and we can just get the dialog progress and we can set it like so. And then the last and final thing we want to do is actually just update the active dialog branch to the new dialog branch. That's the input on this particular function. Like so. So the last thing we want to do, just down here on the clear, we do want to go ahead and connect that up to here as well for the dialog progress. So that way, even if we choose to clear the progress, it'll still try and pull the save progress for the one we're trying to switch to. Now, as far as I can see, I believe that should be it. Okay. Right then, so at this point, it's just a case of trying to set up some dialogue that uses it, I guess. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go ahead and create a new child of this. AC dialogue. Call this blacksmith. Sure. Why not? And then I want to go ahead and override the dialog progress, so the dialog function. So we can do the switch on name. So for the start of it, and then we'll want to get the active dialog branch, and then we can start adding the dialog. So this will be new dialog, so I don't have any audio to go with it. Get that docked up there. Of course, calling blacksmith. So for the dialog, we do. Actually, let's just set up a few branches. So we could do one for morning, afternoon, and night. So let's say if we start with the night one, we could go. I'm trying to sleep. Leave me alone. And then do the switch on state. So on pass through, we can just close the dialog. And we'll probably want to clear the current progress first. Clear dialog progress, and then we'll end the conversation. And then if we do another one, so we do it on the afternoon. Do I would love a piece of bread. I've not eaten all day. Can you get me one? And then we can add the options, just as we do normally. So sure or no. And then we can do the switch on int for this. So if we choose option 1, we'll start with no, so option 0. If that's the case, we want to go and just clear the progress. although probably come in. Switch. So we'll have him respond to that. So we'll do another add dialogue. Let's put okay. Speak to me if you change your mind. And what we'll do is for the option text, I'll just make the array but leave it blank, so we'll auto close. Like so. Yeah, I am kind of making this up on the spot, so obviously feel free to skip ahead if you want to just see the result. Some of you might find this useful in terms of how I would possibly set some of the dialogue up. If that's the case, obviously keep watching or just go ahead and skip ahead. Okay, yeah, so we've handled the no, so he's just going to respond saying, okay, speak to me if you change your mind. And then that'll trigger the conversation to automatically close after X amount of time. If he does, I'll say, great, come speak to me when you have the bread. So at this particular point, we kind of have two options here. So I'm going to do, let's grab this on. So ideally, when the player comes back in, it comes through this branch. If we've already done these, we'll ignore them and we'll skip to the next bit. So we can actually do a branch at this particular point. And here there could be some check to see if the player has bread on them. So then we kind of have two responses. Unfortunately, I don't have an infantry system, so it's not really something I can check, but we'll just add that in there. Check if player has bread. Just as a reminder for those. So if they have bread, I see you have bread. Can I have it, please? And then we can add the two options here. So do sure or no. Trying to give myself a bit more room. If they don't have any bread, we can just have that saying something similar to the previous one, so come speak to me when you have bread. We'll do the switch again. And what we can do on the pass-through there, we can remove dialog progress. It should be one step, I believe. And then we'll close the conversation. So what will happen here is it'll go back as if this conversation never happened. So if they come in again, it can still branch up or down. If they do have cheese, we can do the two switches. Switch on in. And just as a reminder for those, pass through is when it's passing through the dialogue. Update is when it's first displayed on the screen. So pass through will get called on every previous node, which is just something to be aware of as a part of the flow. So what we can actually do on this check here, when to think of it, is we could actually store a variable in here for has given cheese. Thinking of the mouse now, has given bread. And we can kind of do like an OR statement. So it's if that's true, or whatever the check is that we want to do that checks the inventory, then it goes up through the top branch. That's one thing you can do there. So what so back on this one, so we want to have the two options on there. So if we choose an option 0, so that's given bread, we can set that to true. And that will then kind of lock this variable into true because that's the option we've chosen. And what we could always do down here, we can do something similar. If we say no, we have him respond and then close the dialog. And say, oh, okay, speak to me if you change your mind. So this time we can actually remove dialog progress again, but this time we want to go back 2 steps because we want to go back to this particular check here. And then we'll close. So that's that one handled. And then the next one is, so if we say yes, wonderful, I love me some good bread. So what we could actually do, just looking at this, is actually move where this check is, come to think of it. So I'm just going to remove it, and I'm actually going to put it all the way at the beginning. So that way, if it's the afternoon again, still, we can have something slightly different happen based on that dialogue. So in this case, I'm just going to, if it's the afternoon and he's given bread, it'll come through, although we would need to change where we add that variable. Now if we set it here, once this dialog's called and we want to progress again, it will sort of skirt off down to here and cause a few problems. So we kind of want to make sure that's updated last. So what I'll do is do it that way. So we'll call it on the updated, and then we can do the clear dialog progress, and then we'll close the conversation. So it's at that particular point, if the player speaks to them again and it's still the afternoon, we'll get this other message here. So it's thank you for the bread, and we'll just have it auto close again. Just set the array to empty. We'll clear the dialog progress, and then we'll close that conversation. So we need to add something here. So for the options text, so we'll make the array, and we'll clear the element. And that's just so that it does the auto progress. Okay, so the next one I want to do is the morning one. Again, I'm going to keep it fairly simple. I'm just going to say good morning. Good morning. Yeah, and that's just going to clear the progress again and then close the conversation. Like so. Okay, now what we actually want to do is, obviously these are times of the day. So if you've got like a day-night system with a clock, you can have a check be performed when they first interact with the NPC that would then update the dialogue progress. So what I'm going to do is on the open conversation, just before we actually open it, just double check. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the open conversation is the one that actually creates the widget and adds it to the screen and things like that. So before we do that, we could do a check and then set the tree, so the branch, the dialog branch. Like so, and what I will do just for something nice and quick, I'm just going to go into the player character. I'm going to add a debug key for P. And I'm just going to have a time of day type of thing, time of day. Time span, I can't remember which one it is. Yes, the time span will do. So whenever that's pressed, we're going to add an hour. Again, this is not how you would set up a time of day system. This is just so we've got some data that we can use just to test to see if it's working. And I'm just going to print the string. Actually, I'm going to do print text. Pull from that format. So I can do a day. I want hours. Minutes. Yeah, just if you've not used the format text before, if you do the curly braces surrounding something, when you press enter, it creates an input variable, which we can then use to input data, and it'll go wherever it's listed. So connect the days, hours, and minutes. So if we quickly test to make sure that's working. Yeah, so you see the top corner there, it's adding an hour. And then we'll wrap around, so on day 1. Okay, so that's that working. So if we go back to the blacksmith, we can then sort of do the check. So if we get the interaction, so to the get owner. Double check how that's handled. Okay, so we don't actually have a function there. So on the interact function, I'm just going to add a new function called get interaction instigator. And the input is going to be of type actor. So on the NPC base, we can then have, it shouldn't be an input, my bad, it should be an output. Interaction instigator. If we go to the NPC base, we should see that, so interaction instigator, and we can just connect that variable up. And that just allows us inside this particular one, we can get the owner, and then just call that function, get interaction instigator. Again, because we're in the blacksmith dialogue, obviously this won't happen on all of the dialogue, so you just add it as of when you need it. Cast to the third person character. So if you've got like a time of day system, then instead of getting the character, you would get the time of day system, or whatever it is that stores the variable for time. So it's from here we can start doing some checks to determine what this is going to be. So we could do, so if that's greater than or equal to 5, but less than, I've forgotten the ones we use now, morning, afternoon and night. So then we'll do less than 14, 15. Again, these are kind of arbitrary numbers, so you can kind of pick whatever you want. So 15 for that one, but less than 23 or 22. So these do need to be hands, so I'll quickly get those up as well. And then the last one too, just to know when it's the. Actually, I suppose if either of these fail, then we know it's going to be the night time. So that should cover the third option. So one thing that we can actually do is convert these balls into integers. So if we multiply, let's convert that to an int. We'll select int. So 2int. So if it's false, it'll be 0. If it's true, it'll be 1. And the second option, if we actually multiply that by 2, and then we can add these together. So now this will go from 0 to 3 based on the combination. So we're going to do a select on here, get that up, and we can add the 4 options. So if these are all false, then it's night time. So we can say night. If it's 1, that means this one's true and that one's false, so that would be morning. If that one's false and that one's true, that'd be the afternoon. And this one wouldn't be used, so I'll put that as default. Yeah, so just with the way that these balls are set up, these can never both be true, which would be the third option, but we don't need that. So now in theory, when we interact with the blacksmith NPC, that's what should happen. So I'm just going to duplicate the mouse, let's go in blacksmith. I'm just going to remove the dialog component and add the blacksmith one. And we just need to make sure we connect up the open conversation again. Yeah, and then we can drop the blacksmith in. I'm going to pop him down this door. So hopefully everything should be working now. So if we speak to him, it says, I'm trying to sleep, leave me alone. So press P, let's see, for the time of day. So if we go past 11, that's good morning. Although it does seem to be, yeah, so now it says good morning. If we increase it again a little bit more, so I would love a piece of bread. I want to eat all day. Get me some. So we say sure. Great company speaks to me when we have bread. I see you have bread. Can I have it, please? So we say no. Okay, speak to me, change your mind. If we interact with them again, looks like we might need to change the how far we step back a little bit there. But if we continue to change the time, you see the different messages. But if we go back to within the range, it still keeps the progress that we've got. So thank you for the bread. So yeah. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but hopefully that give you a bit of an idea of how you could use the name branch dialog and storing that information to keep track of different progress through your branches, things like that. And so when it comes to removing the dialog progress, you can obviously play around with those so it steps back as far as you need to go. So yeah, so I think that's everything. So yeah, so I just want to say thank you for watching, and again I just want to say thank you for the support that everyone's given me. I know a lot of people really like this dialogue system, and I just hope this is one of those additional things that will just make it even better and easier for you guys to use. So yeah, so I just want to say thanks for watching, and take care.